The words hit like a sledgehammer to my chest. 28 years old and my own mother stood in our kitchen, arms crossed, telling me I was too old to be living under her roof anymore. "You're a grown man, Daniel. It's time you figured your life out somewhere else." My coffee mug trembled in my hands. The kitchen fell silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. The same refrigerator I'd helped her pick out 3 years ago when money was tight and I'd quietly paid for half of it without telling her. I stared at the woman who raised me, the woman who used to make me pancakes on Sunday mornings, the woman who drove me to soccer practice every Tuesday and Thursday for 6 years straight. Now she looked at me like I was some burden she needed to shed. "Mom, I help with the mortgage payments. I buy groceries. I keep the lawn maintained." She waved her hand dismissively. "That's not the point. You need independence. You need to grow up." Something cold settled in my stomach. Independence. Growing up. As if the past 2 years of 18-hour days building my startup from this very kitchen table meant nothing. As if the sleepless nights coding, the rejected investor meetings, the constant stress that made my hair fall out at 26 didn't count as real work because I wasn't wearing a suit to some corporate office. "I'm working on something big, Mom. Just give me a little more time." Her laugh was sharp, cruel. "Working on what? Playing on your computer all day? Daniel, I'm serious. I want you out by the end of the month." 3 weeks. She was giving me 3 weeks. I set down my coffee mug and walked upstairs to my childhood bedroom. The walls still had posters from high school. My old baseball trophies collected dust on the bookshelf, but my desk told a different story. 3 monitors, a high-end laptop, notebooks filled with code and business plans scattered everywhere. For 2 years, I'd been building something revolutionary, a logistics optimization platform that could transform how mid-sized companies manage their supply chains. The kind of boring technical solution that makes investors' eyes glaze over until you show them the profit projections. 6 months ago, everything changed. TechFlow Industries had reached out through my business partner, Marcus. They wanted to acquire us, not just license our technology, but buy us outright. The number they offered made my hands shake when I first saw it. $42 million. For a piece of software I'd built in my childhood bedroom while my mother complained about my life choices downstairs. But I'd kept it quiet. The lawyers said complete confidentiality until all documents were signed and funds transferred. Even Marcus didn't know the exact amount, just that it was significant. The closing was scheduled for next Friday. Next Friday, 5 days after my mother's deadline for me to move out. The irony tasted bitter in my mouth. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, the same ceiling I'd stared at through chickenpox, heartbreak, college stress, and 1,000 childhood worries. Now it felt like a countdown timer ticking toward something I couldn't quite name. My phone buzzed. Marcus. "Dan, the lawyers confirmed everything. Friday afternoon at 2 p.m. You ready for this?" Ready. Was anyone ever ready to have their entire life change in a single afternoon? "Yeah, I'm ready." "Man, your life's about to completely transform. First thing you should do is get yourself a nice place. Get out of your parents' house and live a little." I almost laughed. If only he knew. The next morning, Mom was waiting in the kitchen with real estate listings spread across the counter. I found some nice apartments downtown. Nothing too expensive, but clean, safe. She slid a circled listing toward me. A studio apartment, 600 square feet. The rent was more than I'd ever paid for anything in my life, but somehow she expected me to afford it on what she assumed was my non-existent income. "Thanks, Mom. I'll look into it." She softened slightly. "Daniel, I'm not trying to hurt you. I just think you need a push. You're brilliant, but you're hiding from life in this house." Hiding from life. Building a company that was about to sell for $42 million was hiding from life. I nodded and took the listings upstairs. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. The days crawled by like torture. Mom kept dropping hints about apartment hunting, about job interviews, about real careers. She spoke to me like I was a disappointing teenager who needed tough love to straighten out. Meanwhile, my phone rang constantly. Lawyers, accountants, the acquisition team at TechFlow. Documents to review, signatures to provide, bank account information to verify. Thursday night, I couldn't sleep. Tomorrow would change everything. By tomorrow evening, I'd have more money than my mother had seen in her entire lifetime. More money than she'd probably see in the next 3 lifetimes. And she had no idea. Friday morning arrived gray and drizzling. Mom was already gone when I came downstairs. She left a note on the kitchen counter. Daniel, I know today's your last day, and I know this is hard, but I believe in you. You're going to figure this out. You're stronger than you think. Love, Mom. I stared at that note for 10 full minutes. Part of me wanted to tell her everything. Part of me wanted to see the shock on her face when she realized what I'd accomplished right under her nose. But a bigger part of me was hurt, angry. She judged my life without knowing anything about it. She decided I was a failure without asking what I was actually working on. At 1:45 p.m., I sat in the law office conference room, hands surprisingly steady as I signed document after document. The TechFlow executives were friendly, professional, excited about the acquisition. Gentlemen, congratulations. The transfer is complete. My phone buzzed with a notification from my bank app. I opened it expecting to see some preliminary amount, maybe a partial payment. The number on the screen didn't look real. $42,370,000 after fees and taxes and Marcus's split. My cut was $28,400,000. I was 28 years old, and I was worth $28 million. The drive home felt surreal. Everything looked the same but felt different. The grocery store where I'd worked summers in high school, the gas station where I'd gotten my first speeding ticket, the neighborhood where I'd learned to ride a bike. Mom's car was in the driveway when I pulled up. Our driveway. For now. She was in the living room watching the news when I walked in. How did the apartment hunting go? Did you put in an application anywhere? I sat down across from her. Actually, Mom, I need to tell you something. She muted the TV. What's wrong? You look strange. I sold my company today. Her eyebrows furrowed. Your company? Daniel, what are you talking about? The work I've been doing upstairs for the past 2 years. The logistics platform. I built a company, and today I sold it to TechFlow Industries. She stared at me like I was speaking a foreign language. Sold it for how much? The moment stretched between us like a taut wire. $42 million. The color drained from her face. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. No words came out. After taxes and splitting with my business partner, I cleared about $28 million. She gripped the arm of her chair. $28 million? Yes. Silence filled the room like smoke. The news played soundlessly on the TV. Some story about traffic accidents that suddenly seemed impossibly trivial. Daniel, are you serious right now? I pulled out my phone and showed her the bank notification. Her hands trembled as she held it, staring at the number like it might disappear. This is real? It's real, Mom. She sank back into her chair. $28 million, and you've been living in our house this whole time? Your house, I corrected quietly. It's your house, and yes, I've been living here while building the company that just made me $28 million. The weight of those words settled between us. She looked around the living room like she was seeing it for the first time. The worn carpet we'd been meaning to replace, the couch with the faded arms, the coffee table with ring stains from years of drinks. Why didn't you tell me? Because you never asked what I was working on. You just decided I was wasting my time. Her face crumpled slightly. Daniel, I had no idea. I thought you were just. I don't know what I thought. You thought I was a loser, a grown man who couldn't take care of himself, a burden you needed to get rid of. The words came out harder than I intended, but they'd been building for months. I never said that. You didn't have to say it. I could see it every time you looked at me. She was quiet for a long moment. So what happens now? I stood up and walked to the window. The same view I'd looked at for 28 years. The maple tree I'd climbed as a kid. The sidewalk where I'd learned to skateboard. Now I'm going to buy a house. Where? I turned to face her. Actually, I was thinking right here. Her confusion was visible. Here, in this neighborhood? Not in this neighborhood, Mom. This house. I want to buy this house. The silence that followed was deafening. You want to buy our house? From us? I want to buy your house from you. For market value, cash offer, no inspection contingency, no financing requirements, full asking price, whatever that might be. She stared at me like I'd grown a second head. Daniel, this is our family home. And I want it to stay in the family. I want to buy it from you so you can move somewhere nicer. Somewhere you actually want to live. Or stay here and let me cover the mortgage. your choice. The offer hung in the air between us. I don't understand. Why would you want this old house when you could afford anything? I looked around the living room, at the scuff marks on the walls from moving furniture, at the family photos on the mantel, at the worn spot on the carpet where Dad used to pace when he was thinking. Because I built my entire future in this house, because every line of code I wrote was written at that kitchen table, because this is where I became who I am. Her eyes filled with tears. And because, I continued, my voice softer now, maybe I wanted to prove that the life you thought was worthless actually had value. Maybe I wanted to show you that all those hours upstairs weren't wasted. Maybe I wanted you to understand that I wasn't hiding from life. I was building one. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Daniel, I never thought your life was worthless. Then why did you want me gone so badly? The question hung between us like a bridge neither of us wanted to cross. Because I was scared, she whispered finally. I was scared you'd never leave. I was scared you'd end up like my brother Jerry, living with my parents until they died, never having a life of his own. I thought if I pushed you out, you'd find your way. Uncle Jerry, the family cautionary tale. The man who lived in his childhood bedroom until he was 53 years old, working part-time jobs and never quite launching into adulthood. I'm not Uncle Jerry, Mom. I know that now. She looked at me with new eyes. I've always known you were brilliant, but brilliance without direction. I was worried. I had direction, I just couldn't tell you about it. She nodded slowly. The confidentiality agreements. Exactly. We sat in quiet for several minutes, both processing the seismic shift that had just occurred in our relationship. So, she said finally, you really want to buy this house? I really do. We can get it appraised next week. I'll pay whatever the market value is, plus 10% for the convenience of a cash sale. She laughed, a sound somewhere between joy and disbelief. Plus 10%. Listen to you, talking like a real estate mogul. Well, I am a multi-millionaire now. I should probably start acting like one. What will you do with $28 million? It was a good question. I'd been so focused on the company, on the sale, on proving myself, that I hadn't really thought about what came after. I don't know yet. Maybe start another company, maybe invest, maybe travel for a while. I've been working non-stop for 2 years. She smiled, and for the first time in months, it reached her eyes. You know what the funny thing is? She said. What? I was so worried about you growing up and leaving home, and now you're successful beyond anything I could have imagined, and you want to buy the house so you can stay. Maybe that's what growing up actually looks like, not running away from where you came from, but transforming it into something better. That evening, we ordered pizza and sat at the kitchen table where I'd built my empire, the same table where she'd helped me with homework 20 years ago. Can I ask you something? She said between bites. Sure. Were you angry with me? This whole time, were you angry? I considered the question. Yes, and hurt. I felt like you didn't believe in me. I'm sorry, Daniel, I should have asked more questions. I should have trusted that you knew what you were doing. You were trying to be a good mother. You were trying to push me toward what you thought was success. But you were already successful. I just couldn't see it. Over the weekend, we called a real estate agent. The house appraised for $340,000. I offered $375,000 cash with a 30-day closing. Mom decided she wanted to stay in the neighborhood but in something smaller and more manageable. We found a beautiful condo 3 blocks away with a view of the river. The day we signed the papers, she cried. I can't believe my son bought my house, she kept saying. I can't believe my mother wanted to kick me out of it, I replied, but I was smiling when I said it. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. She'd wanted me to become independent and successful. She'd pushed me out to force me to grow up. And in the end, I'd become both independent and successful enough to buy my childhood home outright. 3 months later, I stood in the kitchen of my house, making coffee in my kitchen, looking out my window at my backyard. The same spaces, but transformed by ownership and circumstance. My office was now the entire upstairs. 3 rooms converted into a workspace that rivaled anything in Silicon Valley. I was already working on my next venture, but this time I was taking it slow, being strategic. Mom came by every Sunday for dinner. We'd sit at the same kitchen table, but now instead of her worrying about my future, she'd ask about my investments, my business plans, my next moves. The relationship had shifted in ways neither of us expected. I was still her son, but I was also now her peer in a way that surprised us both. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked one Sunday, "buying this place instead of getting some mansion in the hills?" I looked around the kitchen, at the scratches on the cabinets from years of family life, at the window where I used to watch for the school bus, at the table where I learned to write, studied for tests, and built a multi-million-dollar company. Never. This house made me who I am. Now I get to make it into what I want it to be. That night, after she left, I walked through the room slowly. The living room where I'd played video games as a teenager. The hallway where family photos chronicled 2 decades of birthdays and holidays. The stairs I'd run up and down thousands of times. Everything was the same. Everything was different. I'd proven my point in the most dramatic way possible. I'd shown my mother that her assessment of my life was wrong. I'd demonstrated that success doesn't always look like what we expect it to look like. But somewhere in the process, proving the point had become less important than understanding it. Maybe she was right to push me. Maybe I did need that pressure to finally take the leap and sell the company. Maybe her forcing me toward independence had driven me to complete something I might have tinkered with forever. Or maybe I'd have succeeded anyway, and her doubt had just added unnecessary pain to an already stressful process. The truth was probably somewhere in between. What I knew for certain was this: I'd built something valuable while everyone around me thought I was wasting time. I'd created wealth and security while living in my childhood bedroom. I'd proven that the path to success doesn't always follow the script society writes for us. And now I owned the place where it all happened. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. He was in Dubai, spending his share of the sale on what he called the most epic vacation in human history. "How's life as a homeowner?" he'd written. I typed back, "Exactly the same as life as a renter, except now I can paint the walls whatever color I want." But that wasn't entirely true. Ownership felt different, not just of the house, but of my life, my choices, my future. For the first time in years, I wasn't proving anything to anyone. I was just living. The kitchen table where I'd built my first company sat empty, waiting for the next project, the next late-night coding session, the next big idea. I made a mental note to buy a better chair. After all, I could afford it now. And this time, nobody could tell me I was too old to dream big in the place I called home.